What is going on, everyone? Happy Tuesday. Welcome into Leaving the Yard with Jack Veltri. Normally, you'd see these videos after games for baseball, but because I was out of town this weekend and not covering South Carolina's scrimmage against Air Force, Kevin Miller was there. We're going to be talking with Kevin for a few minutes here just to break down what he saw in what was an 18-3 victory for Gamecock baseball in the unofficial. Do we want to call it official? I think unofficial is the better term for it. The first game of the Paul Mainieri era at South Carolina went out with a bang there to start off the fall slate of scrimmages, and it was a good one. Kevin, first off, how are you?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm glad to be on this morning.
Yeah, thanks for joining and stuff. So I guess I'll ask you the main question. Just, are you okay after spending 5 hours at the ballpark? Are you recovered?
Yeah, it might be a bit unofficial because it's just a scrimmage, but it officially went 14 full innings, including playing the bottom of the 14th, despite being up 18-3. I'm good. It was a long time, but they hooked us up with a concession stand voucher. So the chicken nuggets and French fries, or chicken tenders and French fries, got me through. But we're good. It was good to see the Gamecocks in action, really, for the first time against someone other than themselves. And I think it'll help shape our off-season discourse a little bit about the team as we get ready for the spring.
Definitely. And we'll have a lot to talk about from this game. And then next week on next Thursday, South Carolina heads to Charleston to play COC in their second and final scrimmage against another team that is this fall. But Kevin, with this game, obviously you had the flyover and all these pregame festivities and stuff. Paul Mainieri used to coach Air Force back in the day, so there was a lot of meaning for him with this game. But just overall thoughts, how did you feel like the day went for South Carolina? Did it go about as you kind of expected, or did you expect something else?
I think it went about like what I was expecting based on what we have seen at some of the other scrimmages, the inter-squad scrimmages, that is. There was a bigger crowd than I was expecting. Official announced attendance, which I'm not really sure how they got the number since it wasn't a ticketed event, but official announced attendance was over 2,500 people. A fair amount of them were rocking Air Force blue, though, which was pretty cool to see that many people coming out to see the Air Force. You mentioned the parachuters, the flyover, all the extra stuff that comes with playing against the service academy, stuff that helps you as an American, just kind of helps you put certain things into perspective. So that was a cool intro to it. But as far as on the field, there were a lot of things that Coach Mainieri was very encouraged by. He told us even after the scrimmage that he used the words encouraging, he used the words good, he used the words intriguing, things like that. So there were a lot of things, and we can break down more specific things in a few minutes. But I think overall it was one of those situations where South Carolina did the things that they were supposed to do, and that hasn't always been the case in recent years. So it was a bit of a breath of fresh air in that regard.
Definitely. And so kind of jumping into the game itself, obviously a lot of offense, but I noticed you wrote a story about this as a sidebar piece the other day, the pitching. What did you see specifically from the pitching? And we'll kind of get into everyone here in a bit. But Eli Jerzenbeck got the start for the Gamecocks in this game. And, for the most part, from when I've been there at scrimmages, obviously I didn't get to see him pitch on Saturday. So, obviously I'll let you talk on that. But he's been looking really sharp so far this fall. His command was a little erratic in the first outing of the fall about a month ago now. But he's really come along, and he looks like that number one guy in the rotation. But from Saturday, with what you saw, what did you make of his performance?
Yeah, it was really encouraging to see the radar gun at Founders Park, or should I say Ray Tanner Field at Founders Park, light up and say 93, 94, when Eli Jerzenbeck was pitching. Sometimes when guys are coming off injury, they can be a little bit hesitant to just uncork and go full 100% velocity. So it's good to see him light up the radar gun a little bit. But he looked really good in the first inning, and things went a little sideways in the second inning. But after the scrimmage, when we were talking with Coach Mainieri, he kind of chalked it up to some arm fatigue. And for people who aren't familiar, when you have an arm injury, you have to build back up or stretch back out to get to your full starter stamina, so to speak. And apparently, to get Jerzenbeck there, Terry Rennie, Gamecock pitching coach, has been putting Jerzenbeck through a pretty serious throwing program. So right now, he's got a little bit of fatigue. So going that second inning might have been a little more than he was really able to do. But by the spring, he will be good to go. Coach Maneri and Coach Rooney are very, very pleased with what they've seen from him. And if the first inning from Saturday is any indication, I think a weekend starting gig is Eli Jerzenbeck's right now.
Definitely. I think he will probably end up cracking the starting rotation by opening day next year for sure. I mean, he's still got a lot of time because, there's still a few weeks left in the fall, and then you have the build up as the quote unquote spring training, I guess, in the winter months leading up to opening day. But I will ask, for you being there, did they play like a real, was it kind of basically just a real game essentially? Like no stopping the inning after a certain pitch count? Was it like getting 3 outs? What was the deal there?
No, it was more like a real game. I think it was the 5th inning. South Carolina batted around. In a lot of scrimmage settings, that's not something they would allow. It's like, oh, we've got a 7-batter maximum or something like that. But no, they played it like a real game with the caveat of South Carolina had 10 batters in the lineup. They did that to get 2 DHs in there. And some of that is because Blake Jackson, I don't believe, is quite ready for 100% duty in the field. And they were also allowing courtesy runners, something you often see in scrimmages. So when Jackson got on base, he was going to be run for immediately. And he actually left the game. He got hit in the head. It was an off-speed pitch, but he got hit in the head. But Coach Maneri, after the scrimmage, gave the seal of approval, so to speak, on Jackson's status, said that he seems to be fine. He passed all the concussion protocol tests, but with it being a scrimmage, they're like, yeah, we're not gonna take any chances. We're gonna pull him out. He'll be fine, but we just want to make sure. So anybody who saw that and was wondering, every indication is that Blake Jackson's fine.
Well, that's good to see because, Blake's obviously been pretty banged up this fall. He had been out for a handful of scrimmages, returned recently before this Air Force one. But overall, look, I think he's a guy that you'll probably see him in the outfield a good bit next season. And of course, he's got plenty of time to get healthy and stuff. But getting hit in the head with a pitch, definitely not the best thing in the world. But hey, good to see that he's doing well. Another pitcher I wanted to ask you about before we kind of transition to the offense, Jake McCoy has really, I think, been pretty impressive. Overall, there were some times in the early parts of the fall, kind of like with everyone, where he's walking a lot of guys. He seems to be unable to locate the zone. But recently he's been able to. What did you make of his performance on Saturday? And what did Paul Maneri have to say about Jake? Because I know he was asked about what he thought about his performance as well.
Yeah, definitely. There were a lot of good things that we saw out of Jake McCoy. He had some struggles in the fall, some earlier in the fall, like you mentioned, with his command, walking some batters. And if you just look at the box score from Saturday, you might think that continued. But if you were actually there, you'd see it was a little bit different. And Coach Maneri actually pointed out after the scrimmage that he thinks that McCoy got squeezed a little bit on 2 of his walks. And really, one of them should have definitely been a strikeout before the walk. But even with the adversity of having some runners on base, maybe unjustly, he continued battling and dropped some absolutely disgusting curveballs on some Air Force hitters and struck out the side and got out of it without any further damage. No runs scored. And when Coach Maneri was talking to us after the game, I asked him not specifically about Jake McCoy, but I asked him about his pitchers missing bats because the Gamecocks struck out 22 batters in 14 innings. And I just asked him if he thought that, strikeouts were going to be a strength of this South Carolina pitching staff. And you can tell a coach means it when he praises one of his guys, when he starts to talk unprompted about a certain player. Because I asked him about the staff as a whole, and he immediately started talking about Eli Jerzenbeck and Jake McCoy. And when he was talking about McCoy, he said that he believes McCoy is going to be a key part of the team this year, a key part of the pitching staff. And he even at one point used the word rotation, which leads me to believe that Coach Maneri believes that Jake McCoy has a real shot of cracking the weekend rotation this year, which would be interesting because that means that a veteran pitcher would likely get moved to the bullpen or a weekday role, which means that the staff could be in a position to have a lot of good arms.
And that's something I think that could probably benefit South Carolina. Like, look, someone is going to not make this rotation that we think probably could. We don't know who it will be. And I think you're right. You're alluding to a potential being a veteran that gets left out of the weekend rotation. And that is just the reality of SEC baseball because you're pitching the best guys and throwing them. And if it happens to be Jake McCoy, it wouldn't shock me because, look, he's probably got some of the better stuff on the team. He throws just about as hard as anyone, probably the hardest on the team. And when he's in command, he's really tough to hit. And I think that's why when Mark Kingston originally recruited him, super high on him. And then obviously Paul Maneri now working with him and Terry Rooney and stuff, he's only going to get better. So there's something special about McCoy that I feel like we just haven't fully been able to unlock yet and see. But we know how good his stuff is, and it can translate over very well. And finally, on the pitchers here, was there anyone else in particular? I know a lot of guys threw this weekend, so don't feel like you have to name off every single guy because, I mean, it's a 14-inning scrimmage, too. Like 5 hours that's a lot of baseball. But I will ask, was there anyone else in particular that just caught your eye, stood out with the way they pitched on the mound?
Yeah, I think they threw 14 pitchers. So, there's a lot of names, but I was impressed by a couple of veterans too. So I know we've talked about the young guy in McCoy and a guy in Jerzenbeck who's in his third year, but experience-wise, he's still pretty young. But Matthew Becker looked really solid in one inning of work, and so did Roman Kimball. I believe they each logged 2 strikeouts in their one inning, and they were both having some good success with their fastball. Matthew Becker was hitting 93, 94 on the gun, which he's been able to do at times. But it was good to be able to see him do that over the course of a full inning. I don't know if the staff has a particular plan for him as a starter or as a reliever. I think he has stuff that can play up to a bullpen role if that's what they want, but he's also got the experience of starting. So he can be stretched out. He can be a guy who goes multiple innings. So it was good to see him pitch well. And like I said, Roman Kimball was very similar in that regard. Dylan Eskew had a very classic Dylan Eskew inning in that he allowed a base runner or two, but he got an inning-ending double play on a sinker. Like, I mean, that's Dylan Eskew ball, right? He put the ball low in the zone, got a grounder, and got out of it, which is that's a very veteran type move. That's something that you can get from him. There were a few others. Brandon Stone looked good. I don't think he had a strikeout, but he induced a lot of weak contact in his one inning. Sorry, I've actually got the box score over here. Let me take a peek, make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. We had a few other guys also strike out the side. Jarvis Evans, he had a walk, but then he had 3 strikeouts after that. And let's see, I think Wyatt Evans had a good showing. Wyatt Evans and Aiden Palmer had a couple strikeouts. He had some walks too, but his stuff looked really good. Ashton Crowther, the transfer, the lefty, he struck out the side without allowing a base runner. So there's a lot of intriguing arms. I don't think, and this is no offense to our friends, the Falcons here, I don't think the Air Force is going to be a tremendous team this year, but this is still Division I baseball. And if you're racking up as a staff 22 strikeouts in 14 innings, that's pretty impressive. So I think there's a lot of good things to build on from this. And Terry Rooney's going to have a lot of options this year.
And it's very encouraging, like you said, that they had that many strikeouts. And they were able to get so many different pitchers into the game. And, yeah, it's against Air Force. Like, Air Force hasn't been particularly good in the last decade or so. But overall, look, it's still a scrimmage against an outside opponent. And that's the one thing that benefits about baseball. Because I got this question over the weekend or leading up to the scrimmage, like, how beneficial is it that these guys in baseball get to go up against outside competition, because in football, that's the only sport where you don't get to scrimmage against an outside foe. You only get to go up against yourselves in a spring game and stuff. It's so beneficial to be able to play outside competition. Yeah, it's against Air Force, but you're also going to be playing a really good Charleston team next week. So it's a good gauge of where you're at this point in the year. You know what you have, and you get to see it go up against some other teams out there. Like, you don't have to just do it in inter squad type, scrimmages and stuff. So
and you have to make adjustments on the fly because it's an opponent you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
You know your guys. So you know that, okay, Jake McCoy's got a good breaking ball, so if I'm down 0-2, he's probably going to throw it. You probably don't have that information about some random pitcher from Air Force. You obviously have some scouting that you do during the season at least, but this is a better picture of going up against a different opponent than it is when you're just facing guys that you see every day at practice. You know how they work. It's almost like you have a cheat sheet for how to beat your own guys because you see them every day. So it was encouraging to see South Carolina go up against another team, a team that they're not familiar with, and win handily and have no errors over 14 innings. That's a big thing. And if you would have told anyone who watched South Carolina baseball during the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament that they could go 14 innings without an error, they would have called you crazy.
No, totally right. And just being at those games last year, the defense was, to put it bluntly, just not good enough last year. There were so many mistakes they made, and it ended up proving costly. But I feel like with this year's team, still got a long way to go till opening day and the season and stuff. But it's encouraging to see that not just this scrimmage, but even in the ones prior at Founders Park, the defense had been much cleaner, and they had been going 5, 6, 7 innings without an error in some of those inter-squad scrimmages. So it's a really encouraging thing to see that the defense is good. Flipping it over to the offensive side of the ball, obviously, just like the pitching, a lot to talk about here. We're obviously going to condense it as best as possible. In the fifth, the Gamecocks are up 4-2, and they explode for 8 runs to take a 12-2 lead. And eventually, they obviously went on to win 18-3. What did you make of the offense in this game? Obviously, a lot of runs to be scored. A lot of guys got in there. I think we got basically kind of a preview of what the opening day lineup could potentially look like for this team, with a lot of veterans in there, but also a lot of transfers. What did you make of the starting 9 for the offense, and how do you feel like this group looked from an offensive standpoint?
This is going to sound a little strange, but I think it was really encouraging that South Carolina only hit 2 home runs. And what I mean by that is South Carolina was able to score 18 runs while only putting 2 balls over the fence. And by the way, one of the balls that was hit out, Jace Woida hit one off the back of the bullpen wall the opposite way, which is an absolute tank job. They said it was like 380-something feet, but if you take out that bullpen wall, you're talking about a 400-plus foot shot the other way. But it was really encouraging to see the Gamecocks score in a variety of ways. You saw a lot of good just approach at the plate where you see guys get the barrel to the baseball, not necessarily trying to hit the ball over the fence every time, but just make the right decision, make a good, clean swing, put the ball in play. Talmadge Lecroy had a couple of hits just like that where he put a nice line drive into the outfield, got a couple RBIs doing that. Ethan Petrie ended up with 4 hits. I know one of them was more of the maybe the defense should have got it variety, but still ruled a hit. That was his double. It was just a pop-up behind first base, kind of into that no man's land. But you saw a lot of guys do a lot of good things with the bat. Caden Gaskin, who's a guy that, could be the starter at second base this season, depending on how things go. He had a triple, and it wasn't a triple that you would see off the bat, okay, that's 3. It was one, okay, that's a nice double, and then you realize, oh, he's even faster than I thought. And by the time, because the ball was hitting the left center, you don't see a whole lot of triples to left center. By the time the outfielders got to the ball, he was already at second base, so it made the decision to send him to third pretty easy. And I believe he actually stood up, didn't have to slide at all, just showed off his speed there. And Dalton Mayshore had a good showing with the bat, including a home run. And he's a guy that there was a lot of hype for him committing to the Gamecocks out of the transfer portal. but the fall hadn't been great. It hadn't been bad, but it hadn't been great yet. So it was good to see him have a good day. So all in all, a lot of reasons to be encouraged with the Carolina offense. There were still a few times where you saw some big swings where you might have liked a different approach, but that was a lot less frequent than what we've seen in recent years. You didn't see a whole lot of guys with 2 strikes still trying to hit the ball over the fence. You saw a lot of intentional, smart baseball approach, including a hit and run, Jack. There was a hit and run in this game, and it was with Talmadge LeCroy running and Will Tippett hitting. If you would have given me 15 guesses at the combination that ran a hit and run and did it successfully, I probably wouldn't have gotten there. But it goes to show that Coach Maneri, Coach Lee, their staff, they have a lot of confidence in their guys and the new approach that they have them playing with. And we saw some of that.
I know a lot of people are going to be asking about, you brought up Talmadge LeCroy. You obviously alluded to Ethan Petrie earlier, having the 4-hit day. Talmadge playing catcher on Saturday, and a lot of people are definitely wondering, I'm sure, how he's been looking. We talked about before. He, I think, has been looking pretty sharp behind the plate this fall. I think he's ultimately going to win the starting catching job just because he's a better hitter when he's on compared to anyone else that is a catcher on this team. No disrespect. It's just the facts, I think. And then Ethan Petrie. I thought maybe he would just be playing right field this year, maybe even first base potentially. But they've got him over at third, and that is a position that he hasn't really played much of in college. Obviously, he came to South Carolina, I believe, as a third baseman. But what did you make of those two guys at those positions? Because I know a lot of people are probably wondering how they looked out there.
Yeah, and we can start with LeCroy there first. He looked okay behind the plate. He had a little trouble gloving the ball a few times, but he also hasn't really played the position in several years. So he's just now getting back into being a guy who catches consistently. He didn't do anything that was just like glaring, like, oh yeah, he's not ready for this. There was one pass ball that looked kind of rough, but it could have been one of those situations where you get your signs mixed up with your pitcher. We don't obviously have all of that information, but he looked fine. And if he hits the way he's hit, he's going to play somewhere regardless. And that might be behind the plate. As for Ethan Petrie, it was interesting. After the scrimmage, Coach Maneri was talking to us about Petrie playing third because he didn't get any balls hit to him during the scrimmage while he was at third. He had some once he moved back out to the outfield. But when he was at third, nothing was hit to him. And he said, you guys didn't get to see it, but he's looked good at third at practice. Said he's looked okay in some of the intra-squad scrimmages, but he's looked really good at practice. And he said the only reason he's playing third is because he told me to give him a chance there. Apparently, Coach Maneri wasn't necessarily familiar with the fact that Petrie had come up as a third baseman until he reminded him of that. And with Nolan Naraki kind of battling a bruised knee, he hit a wall going for a pop-up not too long ago. With him battling a bruised knee and a couple other guys trying to figure out where they're going to play, they just slotted Petrie in there. And apparently he's looked really good at practice. And you're going to find a place for Ethan Petrie in the lineup somewhere. And that could be third base. It could be the outfield, could be first base. But as you and I have talked about previously, there are a lot of guys vying for spot or time in the outfield. There's a lot of good bats that can play out there. Even Jace Woida, who's not really an outfielder, he was playing some left. Why? Because he can hit. And so with so many guys who can swing the bat pretty well vying for time, if you can play Ethan Petrie at third base, that opens up an outfield spot for somebody like, Dalton Mayshore played right field to start the game. And that also improves your outfield defense a lot if you've got him in right field as opposed to Petrie, who's fine, but he's not nearly as fast as somebody like Dalton Mayshore is. So, yeah, man, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to watch. We didn't get to see Petrie really at third, even though he was there. But this doesn't seem like it's just something that, they're going to try once. It seems like it's something they're really looking into.
Definitely. And last thing I want to hit on here before we get out of here, Kevin, got 3 questions for you. Going to jumble it into one. what is your biggest takeaway from the weekend? Who's one player that surprised you? And what is one thing you would like to see from this team the next time they come out when they go to Charleston next week?
Okay. All right. So, overarching takeaway, I'd say that this team appears to have a better grasp of the importance of doing the little things. South Carolina baseball fans we'll just say they've not been too happy the past couple of years with how their team has maybe abandoned some of the little things, whether you're talking about defense or base running or two-strike approach. This team seems to be taking those things more seriously, and I think that'll go a long way once we get to the season. A player that surprised me, I'd have to go with Ashton Crowther. You strike out the side, and not just strike out, he blew the side away. He looked really good. He's a guy that's shown promise before at Miami, but now that he's in Columbia, it's kind of been like, okay, what can he do for the Gamecocks? If Saturday is any indication, he's going to be an important part of the pitching staff. You don't accidentally just strike out the side and not give up any base runners. Like, you have to have good stuff to do that. So I'd say he was a surprise. And what they need to do better moving into the next scrimmage, I would say probably just overall walks as a pitching staff. The Gamecocks gave up too many free passes between walks and hit by pitches. I think there were 11 walks and 3 HBPs, so 14 free runners in 14 innings, which isn't like that. It's not good. It's not some horrific number, but it's not good. And Coach Maneri was pretty clear about that in the post game. He told us that the only negative that he had for his pitching staff is that they walk too many guys, and I agree with that. And I think if that continues, it could be a problem. You can't give away free base runners, especially once you get into SEC play and you're facing off against good offenses that'll make you pay for it. But they've got time to work on that, and hopefully they will see some success at improving that when they go down to Charleston.
And that's a good thing that they have. Look, they have this scrimmage in the books. There's nothing you can do to change it now. You got the win. That's the important part. You got to see a lot of different guys get in and play and pitch and hit and run, everything you want to see. And look, there's going to be mistakes. The walks are going to happen. You also got a lot of strikeouts in this game. You got to see a lot of guys go out there and play different positions and do different things. And I think it's really encouraging that there's a lot of good to take away. And, of course, there's always going to be some bad too. But the thing is, you still have a lot of time left before the season. And having these 2 scrimmages, I'm telling you guys, it is going to be massive for what is to come next year. Because, look, there's going to be a lot of expectations for next year. And if you didn't play these 2 scrimmages, I feel like you'd be feeling like, okay, we don't know much about this team other than the fact of, yeah, they play 4 times a week in inter-squad scrimmages at Founders Park. But it's nothing like what you're going to see in a real game. And so to have these scenarios, even if it's against Air Force and Charleston, it's still competition, and it's good competition at the end of the day. And speaking of which, South Carolina plays their second and final opponent scrimmage against another team next Thursday at Riley Park in Charleston, 6 p.m. first pitch. I'll be back back covering this team for that scrimmage next week out in Charleston. So we'll do a traditional leaving the yard after the game and stuff to give initial thoughts and all that. And then obviously this week, there's going to be a lot of inter-squad scrimmages, again, at Founders Park, just like normal. We don't have a full slate of times yet, although on Tuesday, before it happens, they're playing at 3:45 p.m., the Garnet and Black, going at it. So it should be a lot of fun. Be over there for that. Kevin, any other thoughts you have from baseball scrimmage or anything that you want to share?
No, I don't think so. Other than the French fries at Founders Park were very good. And that could be just because I was hungry because I was up in the press box for 5 hours. But they were very good. So, hey, hit up the concession stand when you come out this spring.
Oh, yeah, definitely cannot go wrong with those tenders and fries, man. It's an elite combination. And we'll have a lot of opportunities to talk about this team throughout the offseason and, of course, leading up to opening day in a few months. So, Kevin, appreciate you joining me, my man. Thank you so much. That's going to do it for us from Gamecock Central. Take it easy, guys, and we'll see you guys again sometime soon.